Jammin J Auto Tire. I want to show you something we're seeing on these transit vans. This is a Transit 250 and it has a 3.5 V6 in it. And we're going to categorize this under why is it so expensive to get my vehicle fixed. Well, what we're finding on these transit vans is because this thing has such a short hood, and please understand that when it rains, your windshield's like a big old funnel and it brings the water into this lip. Well, apparently in some situations this water's getting over this lip and it's dripping water on top of the engine. And what happens is there's 4 bolt holes up in here and they fill up with water and then the bolts rust. And basically what happens, those bolts rust so bad that you cannot get down in that hole. And what we end up having to do, this is actually the new intake, but we actually had to cut this whole intake out. We have pictures with the carnage in there, and go in and really cut these bolts out because once again they were so stripped off down there. And then we actually have a bucket of plugs, and we actually found a couple plugs that were the right size, and we sprayed them black and we stuck them in these holes right here so that way we're not going to get water down in there. But literally those plugs not being in there and those bolts getting rusted like they did. I mean, there's 8 bolts. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's 2 back there. These 4, the front 4 and the front 2 and the back 2 were really easy to get to, and if these weren't rusted they would come right back out. But this literally took this intake manifold job from an hour or so to 4 or 5 hours of cutting. And then the other problem that we ran into is we were getting metal shavings down in the engine, or plastic shavings from the plastic, so we actually had to go back in and fish some of that stuff out of the cylinder. It was a complete mess. Had this engine been in a pickup truck or like a Mustang with the longer hood, wouldn't have had that problem at all. So a little problem that we're seeing on the Ford Transits. So what this is, I'm going to come zoom in a little bit more for me. What we have to do this is we have to take, this is the intake manifold right here, and we have to take it off. The problem is on the transit vans, this is the windshield on the vehicle. Water collects. This windshield's like a big funnel. It funnels all the water down, and on some of the transits, the water's getting over this seal, and it's filling up these bolt holes with water. This intake manifold not being hot enough is not boiling the water off, and it just sits there in rust. So we were able to get some of these bolts out, but this one back in here, and I would show you, but well, maybe we can't get it with the video. That bolt has just rounded off in there, and we actually have 2 of them that we cannot get out. We've tried everything, and what we're going to have to do is we're going to end up having to just break this whole intake manifold off and replace it with a new one. Now this is, if this engine was in a Mustang or a different car, this would not be a problem, but the transit vans are having trouble with the water getting past this seal, and they're flooding the top of this intake manifold. So once again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take this intake off. Of course, we're going to have to break it. Then we're going to get down inside of here, and we're going to do what's called walnut blasting. We're going to. Good morning, Doug from Jammin J Auto Tire here again. This is the follow-up video to the previous one, and I wish I could tell you that this video is 20 minutes later. However, it's actually 2 days later because we had quite the fiasco on this vehicle. Not that we worked on it the entire 2 days, but a lot of time. So crazy stuff. So here's what we're going to do real quick, or what happened since we've been here. This is what the intake manifold was going to look like before we started. The problem is we had to get these 6 bolts out. These 4 were very easy. These 2 were easy. These 2, once again, were rounded off. Now that's one of the bolt heads right there that we did get out. There's one of the other ones that we didn't. And here's the thing. These sleeves run all the way down the length of this. So when this bolt wouldn't come out, we still have this whole metal sleeve all the way down in there, and that was the problem that we had. So we had to be able to get to this bolt. So what we ended up having to do was cut this front tube off and then start cutting it back this way. And then once we got back in here, we could actually go in and stuff towels down inside of here so that the plastic shavings would not go down into the engine. And now we knew that this was going to have to happen, but we didn't know the extent of it. The problem that we ran into is we got a lot of stuff down in one of the cylinders. There's just nothing we could do about it. And what we spent most of the day yesterday doing was literally fishing these little pieces of plastic out of one of the cylinders, and that took us quite a bit of time. What we had to do is we had to use a vacuum cleaner with different tubes and hoses, and then we actually used a piece of hanger with some really sticky glue on it, and we were able to get the plastic to stick to it. We were also able with some air to move the pieces around and get them into the center of the piston, and we went in there with the vacuum cleaner, got them. But that took us quite a bit of time to figure that out. So once again, we had to cut this apart because these bolts were just broken off inside that intake manifold. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go in there. Walnut glasses is a bag of actually crushed walnuts. Ironically, when we got in here and started getting this stuff apart, we did find a walnut underneath the intake manifold, and that's quite a bit. We find rodents, signs of rodents, and sometimes rodents underneath hoods all the time. But so ironically, we found a walnut underneath there.